What's happening, everybody? Brent Axe here from syracuse.com. We're live on the Syracuse Orange basketball Facebook page. We're coming off the heels of a pretty bad loss for the Orange at the Carrier Dome. Final score, Georgia Tech 73, Syracuse 59. So if you are watching us live, welcome. Thanks to our friends at Krause Health. We are here, as we will be after every Syracuse basketball game throughout ACC play. And given what happened tonight, knowing who's on the horizon on Monday, that was going to be a tough night for Syracuse regardless. But it got a lot tougher tonight given how they played against Georgia Tech. So if you are joining us live, please hit that like and that share button. Let people know that we're here. We do put this on YouTube, so many are watching later on YouTube as well. We appreciate that. And just know that on the Syracuse Orange Sports page on YouTube, I put it up in my recap on syracuse.com as well. You can find this at a later time if you can't always make it here live, but we like it when you can make it here live. Yeah, a bad one for Syracuse tonight in a 73-59 loss, and there's a few things that really stand out in how poorly Syracuse played, but none more than 33 is the magic number. And it's ironic because didn't Larry Bird wear the number 33, and he used to shoot a lot of three-pointers and shoot them well for the Boston Celtics. Syracuse certainly did not do that tonight. Syracuse was 7 of 33 from three-point range in this game. That's 21%. They took more three-pointers, significantly more three-pointers than two-point field goals in this game, as Syracuse was 18 of 57 overall. So 18 made field goals for Syracuse, shooting 31%, 7 of 33 from three-point range, 21% from three-point range, 31% from the field. So Syracuse putting up way too many three-pointers in this game and not connecting, not connecting at all against a Georgia Tech defense. It's a top 10 defense. It's one of the better defenses in college basketball. The other night, Georgia Tech almost beat Virginia Tech, who is one of the better three-point shooting teams in the country. But no excuses on that front for Syracuse tonight. They did not play a good game. They got out-hustled. They got outplayed. They got outsmarted. Georgia Tech had a 1-point lead at halftime, came out in the second half of this game. And let's look at those second half numbers because, it only got worse for Syracuse in a lot of ways. In the second half, Georgia Tech outscored Syracuse 46-33. Georgia Tech 15 of 22, 68% from the field. Syracuse 10 of 32 from the field overall in the second half of this game, 2 of 14 from three-point range. There's another big stat in this game that, if you've got something like this on your side, more often than not, you're winning that game. And that stat is points off turnovers. Syracuse collected 28 points off of 22 Georgia Tech turnovers in this game. 9 out of 10 times you show me that stat, I'm going to show you a winning team. The way that Syracuse was not a winning team was not only how many shots they missed tonight, could not solve Georgia Tech's zone defense, ironic as that is, given that, of course, Syracuse is a 2-3 zone team. But Syracuse committed 19 turnovers themselves in this game. And just looking at the numbers, Georgia Tech got 17 points off those turnovers. But to look at that number, that's pretty bad. You got to really shoot the ball horribly to not cash in on a stat like that. And this was a game that, this is how Georgia Tech wants to play. Georgia Tech is a defensive-oriented team. They want to run in the mud. They want to bring you down to their level and kind of make it a boxing match. And Syracuse could just never match that. They could not get inside. It was like, Clark Griswold in National Lampoon's European Vacation. Remember, he couldn't get left. Look, kids, Big Ben, Parliament. Syracuse just could not get in the paint. Until, there was a couple spurts in the second half where O'Shea Brissett was getting some plays inside. But, for the most part, Syracuse just couldn't do it. So they were jacking up threes. And it was interesting, Jim Boeheim saying at the press conference that at some point you got to look yourself in the mirror. And he was talking specifically about Tyus and O'Shea and a couple players and say, why are you shooting three-pointers? You got to wonder what Jim was saying to his team in those timeouts throughout the game. I'm sure he was telling them to look for better passes, look for better shots, don't take those threes. But, that goes two ways. I think Jim – it's hard to say he was out-coached by Josh Pastner because Georgia Tech didn't really do anything other than play a zone. They really mixed up things well. It started on the inside with Gay inside. Georgia Tech was getting, plays in the paint, and, that defense that Marek Dolezaj and Barama Sidibe had played in previous games just wasn't there. Pascal Chukwu had to come in, actually played pretty decent for this team, considering he had 5 rebounds, had a couple of block shots, gave Syracuse a presence in the paint defensively, got hurt at the end of the second half. So we'll keep our eye on that one, see if that's a serious injury for Pascal or not. But Georgia Tech just started inside and then started hitting shots outside, which it tells you what kind of bad night Syracuse has. Coming into this game, Georgia Tech was the worst offense in the ACC efficiency-wise, okay? Tonight, they shoot 59% from the field and 50% from three-point range. Georgia Tech, certainly not a threat from three-point range, but they were efficient when they did. 6 of 12. They shot 12 three-pointers. Syracuse put up 33. I mean, that's the stat you highlight with a big red pen right there. I mean, I just gave you the overall shooting numbers, so when we dig into the individual numbers, it's not going to look good. O'Shea Brissett was 4 of 10. He did end up with 15 points, got to the free throw line a lot in the second half. Marek Dolezaj was limited. Only played 28 minutes in this game. He had 6 rebounds, 5 steals, was good on the defensive end, but only 4 points tonight. Look, Marek Dolezaj is kind of an enigma right now because he's such a scrapper. He hustles. He opens things up for the offense for this team, but he can get overwhelmed physically. He can get pushed out there. And, Syracuse got overwhelmed in the paint. Points in the paint. Huge disparity, 36-12. In favor of Georgia Tech tonight. Frank Howard only played 24 minutes. He was 3 of 8. Did have a couple of three-pointers when Syracuse was trying to rally, but otherwise, pretty bad night for him. Tyus Battle had an awful night. For his standards, certainly 3 of 12. He was 1 of 4 from three-point range. He only scored 11 points in this game. He didn't score from a period of time from 13 minutes to go in the first half until about 3 minutes to go in the second half. So, obviously, Syracuse's number 1 player by some accounts, Elijah Hughes, has actually been better as of late, but your big-time leader, your NBA prospect supposedly, has a bad night. Elijah Hughes, had a streak coming into this game where he had scored 14 points in 8 straight games. He had 12 tonight, but didn't shoot well at all. 1 of 8 from three-point range, 4 of 12 overall. I mean, no matter who you look at, they had a bad shooting night. Really bad offensive night for Syracuse. Buddy Boeheim, 3 of 11. Overall in this game, he was 3 of 8 from three-point range. There was a little bit of a spurt there when Buddy hit a couple of threes. The crowd was trying to get the team back in the game. They were getting behind Buddy, but he ends up 3 of 11 overall. So pretty bad loss for Syracuse. They now are 11-5. They are 2-1 in ACC play. You wanted to take advantage of this stretch when you've got 4 or 5 games, starting with Wednesday's game against Clemson, a game that Syracuse won at home. And now you've got Syracuse playing this way. This was going to be a rough night in Cameron on Monday, one way or the other. And Zion Williamson, I'm sure some of you saw this earlier today for Duke, left, didn't play in the second half. He had an eye injury. It seems accounts coming out of Duke indicate he is going to play Monday against Syracuse. Duke got pushed right to the brink today. Florida State, another ranked ACC team, a good team that Leonard Hamilton is coaching this year. I believe they're 12th or 13th in the country this year. Had the lead late. Ball comes in. Duke wide open, three-pointer on a screen. Bang. They win that game on a buzzer beater. R.J. Barrett kind of had the big day. They have 3 big players. They have Cam Reddish, R.J. Barrett, Zion Williamson. And for Syracuse to get manhandled by Georgia Tech tonight to shoot the way they did at home, and that's now a 3rd loss at the Dome, adding in Old Dominion, adding in Buffalo. Now you lose to Georgia Tech. So you're in the hole one ACC-wise, and this is a team that obviously has no room for error in ACC play. They've got to get to that 10, 11-win plateau, and sometimes it's not the number of wins, it's who'd you beat. And this could end up being a bad loss for Syracuse when you think about the net rankings, when you think about the quadrant system. If this falls in like a quadrant 3 loss for Syracuse, it's pretty bad. So you kind of look at it 2 ways. You look at it as there's a lot of season left. There's 15 ACC games to go. Syracuse is not going to shoot this bad every night. Or you can look at it and say, no, that's kind of what they are. And they're not improving at a rate shooting the ball that they really need to. This is a team that has struggled for the most part offensively, other than a couple of spurts this year. And, for Georgia Tech to come in and kind of manhandle Syracuse, I'm not surprised the style of play ended up being the way that it was. I was anticipating an ugly game, but for Syracuse to have no ability whatsoever to get the ball inside, to move the ball, to get in the paint. I mean, Gay is a big player inside. Georgia Tech's got some big bodies. But this isn't, Patrick Ewing or Alonzo Mourning or, Zion Williamson, who Syracuse is going to see on Monday in there. So really not a lot. Not a lot to look at and be positive about tonight. I mean, obviously, it was a pretty, it bordered on embarrassing for Syracuse tonight. So let's see what you guys are saying here. RJ saying that Boeheim said on his radio program he would always play his veterans over Buddy and Jalen. Yeah, well, Buddy got a lot of minutes tonight because they were trying to get three-pointers going. Jalen played 12 minutes. Frank only played 24 in this game. It depends on the game situation too. Tonight certainly didn't favor the veterans because nobody was hitting shots. Veterans, freshmen, and everything in between. Terrible night for the Orange on the offensive end. Whitney saying you play like this on Monday, you're going to lose by 30. Like Syracuse could play one of their best games of the year and still lose by 30 to Duke. That's how good Duke is. Duke's doing that to a lot of teams. Again, Florida State had a good run against them today. There has been a couple teams that have pushed Duke a little bit this year, but a team like Syracuse playing the way that they are right now, just anywhere near a level to be competitive with Duke on Monday night. Now, watch, they'll go out and on Big Monday and surprise us all, go out there and play a competitive game against Duke. That's how college basketball is. It's weird that way. But, when you are stuck outside and just shooting three after three after three, and as Boeheim mentioned at his press conference, as you, I'm sure, were saying, watching the game, as many of you said in our live chat on syracuse.com, stop jacking up threes. So now in the last two games, just to hone in on two players, O'Shea Brissett and Tyus Battle have combined to go 1 of 18 from three-point range. These are your two best offensive threats, and Elijah Hughes is in that conversation too, but these are the guys that lead the way for Syracuse and have to stop shooting so much when they're not hitting. It's tempting, and Georgia Tech is a good defensive team, and they'll kind of bait you and they'll dare you to take that shot, but if it's not rolling, you got to work from the inside out. You've got to get some kind of offense flowing instead of hoping that the shots start falling. So and this is just not a good three-point shooting team to start with overall. So, if you can't get those shots going, you're kind of stuck. But the thing is, they do have the players that can, Tyus Battle is a player that can get in the paint. O'Shea Brissett is a player that theoretically can get in the paint. Frank Howard just hasn't been able to do this year. But when he's on his game, when he's healthy, when he's confident, can get in the paint. I know Elijah Hughes has been known more for his three-point shooting, and I'll let him off the hook a little bit because he's been great shooting the ball as of late. Tonight, 1 of 8 just wasn't there. But they have players that can get inside. Offensively, Pascal obviously is a liability there, but Marek Dolzaj is somebody that can work around the paint and get in there. It's not like they can't do it. And I don't want to take anything away from Georgia Tech. Full credit to how they play defense tonight. And they're one of the better defensive teams in the country. They're also a 9-6 basketball team coming in that you just basically have to beat the same way you beat Clemson the other night. Syracuse got a balanced offense in a much different way. It was actually, better against Clemson. But you just kind of have to squeak out an ugly one. That's what happens in ACC play. As much as we talk about how great this conference is, there's 4 or 5 teams in this conference that play this way. The thing is, though, that befuddles me is Syracuse has played this way a lot this year. It's not like this came out of nowhere. It's not like this was a game where oh, wow, they're playing in the 50s and 60s and the game is slow and other teams are using the shot clock and it's kind of one of those running through the mud type of games. They played these games all year long because they're not a very good offensive team by and large. So that's surprising that Syracuse was so knocked back by Georgia Tech. And for Georgia Tech to shoot as efficiently as they did, it was just a matter of just getting in the paint. I'll look it up again here just to make sure we're accurate on the stats. I mean, how much Georgia Tech dominated in the paint tonight, 36-16. 36-16 points in the paint for the Orange. The comments are, I can't even keep up with you guys. They're coming in hot and heavy at this point. Let's see. Adrian saying no inside game, no point guard play, not a winning combination. Yeah, it comes and goes with Frank. Jalen is still raw and young, and that's the thing. I brought it up a moment ago. That's where Tyus and O'Shea have to take over. When Frank's not running the show, when the point guard play is not there, you need your veteran players, your best players to say, all right, this is what we need to do. And I'm sure that directive was coming from Boeheim too. Boeheim was certainly telling this team to back off shooting all the threes, but when they're open and they're taking them, and you just think that next one's going to go in. It's that shooter's mentality, shoot or shoot, right? Well, when you don't have a point guard play, you don't have a reliable inside play in terms of a big man. You got Tyus and O'Shea. Those are the two that have to back off on the threes, fight their way inside, not only get in the paint in terms of get to the free throw line. Get to the free throw line. Draw some fouls. Roger Ayers was ref in this game. He's a guy that blows. He's a great ref. He's one of the better refs in the NCAA, but they'll start blowing that whistle if players go inside and start trying to draw those charges and try to draw some fouls. So, that's where you got to be frustrated in the sense that for Tyus and O'Shea have to play smarter. Even Elijah can get in the paint. Elijah's a guy who, if he's not hitting his threes, he's got to fake that three and take it inside. There were spurts of good ball movement, but there wasn't a lot of smart basketball out there. And that spurt, Georgia Tech comes out of the half and hits a 10-0 run. And you kind of knew right there that Syracuse just wasn't going to get in this thing. Javen saying, Brent, a win that needed to get them a break later down the stretch. These are the games you can't lose if you don't want to be on the bubble. Sad to say, we'll all be happy Cuse fans Monday at 9:15 Eastern Time when Cuse leaves Duke with a win. But for that to happen, O'Shea and Hughes will have to have huge games. P.S. I'm your favorite viewer, Hugh, every night. My man Javen right there. Who wants to say that you're the favorite viewer of the show over Javen? He's got you right now, right? Love the confidence. Love that Syracuse can go to Duke and be competitive. You mentioned two names there. Every player on that floor has got to have their best game offensively for Syracuse to have a shot against Duke. I mean, that's just the simple truth of it. Duke, they get 80 points just by remembering what time the game is. They've got three players that are going in the top 5 of this upcoming NBA draft in a few months. And you had a Syracuse team that went out there and shot 7 of 33 from three-point range tonight. Can they snap back to it in Cameron? Here's what they got going for them, okay? In the old adage of, they got that going for them, which is nice, right? Bill Murray from Caddyshack, and they got that going for them, which is nice. Their two best three-point shooting performances this year are on the road. They had 11 three-pointers at Ohio State. They had 12 three-pointers at Notre Dame. So, you want to look on the bright side, which there isn't a lot of tonight. They are shooting the three ball well. Cameron Indoor Stadium is a whole different story, though. So can't be encouraged about Syracuse going into the toughest environment in college basketball and snapping out of this all of a sudden. Uptick in turnovers, too. I brought it up briefly earlier. They had 19 in this game. They had 15 in Clemson. They have seen a rise in turnovers in the last 2 games, and now you're going to Duke. You want to be competitive against Duke. Not only do you have to have your best offensive game, got to crash the boards. You cannot turn the ball over. You've got to have a minimum of 8 or 9 turnovers, like right around there. I shouldn't say a minimum. You've got to have one of your most efficient passing games of the season. A lot to ask for when you're playing the number 1 Duke Blue Devils. Tommy saying, like I said, 0 offense. Boeheim doesn't seem to care that they're not scoring with probably the most talent they've had since 2003. I'd say that 2010 team had a little more talent, but, numbers-wise, there's a lot of talent on this team, but they certainly have not executed that and shown that as a team by and large this year. John saying that this is rock bottom. I don't know if we're at rock bottom yet. Rock bottom's pretty low. Rock bottom's like Boston College didn't win an ACC game last year, kind of rock bottom. Syracuse's standards are a little higher than this. It's a rock bottom kind of game, but don't underestimate what rock bottom could be in college basketball. Syracuse has a lot of time to go here. They've got 15 games left in the ACC. They've got a lot of problems to solve, and there are a lot of problems we've seen in spurts throughout the season. They've been consistent in some of these issues, but rock bottom, let's not go there quite yet. It can get worse, and let's hope it doesn't. But, shooting 7 of 33 from three-point range, having to take 33 three-pointers in any game, that's pretty bad. But we're not quite at rock bottom quite yet. Let's see. Josh making a good point that they double-team Marek tonight. Yeah, Josh Pastner is a smart coach. He doesn't really – a defensive coach. Georgia Tech He's got near a 500 record, and I think he's really got to have a big year this year to get off the hot seat. But the thing is, teams are starting to recognize what Marek means to that offense, so they're doubling down on him. They're keying on him. The other player they're starting to key on is Elijah. You know, teams, when they scout, especially with short turnaround sometimes, you know, you typically look at about 4 or 5 games. In the 4 games prior to this, Marek Dolezaj was a huge difference. He popped out on the tape. So if you're a smart coach, you're saying, yeah, there's some talented players on this team, but I got to key in on this guy because he makes the whole offense flow. And lo and behold, look what happened tonight. Syracuse offense broke down. Elijah's getting some extra attention, which when that happens, that's, again, I'm going back to O'Shea and Tyus. They've got to step up. They've got to take advantage of the extra attention that's going elsewhere. And these are supposed to be NBA players. These are supposed to be players that we were worried about going to the NBA draft this year. Neither one of those two is going to get picked at this rate, which kind of stinks for Tyus because he would have got picked last year in the 2nd round, but you're still an NBA draft pick. He comes back hoping to work on his game, round off the edges, be one of the better players in the ACC, pardon me, and he's been anything but that on a consistent level. He's had some great games, but he's not an NBA level talent is what I'm saying. And O'Shea Brissett is nowhere near an NBA talent at this point. And yeah, he's got a lot of time to go. He'd be leaving after a sophomore year if he had a great year that many anticipated he could. But he's not an NBA pick at this point. And sad to say, Tyus is not as well. We'll see. They've got time. You know, you pile up numbers, you have a good postseason, and NCAA tournament chance is not looking good for this team right now. I've seen guys go on, and the biggest example of that is Malachi Richardson. A couple of years ago, this time of the season, Malachi was in nobody's NBA discussions. Has a huge NCAA tournament, and he's still in the league. He's still in the pros at this point. A couple more comments from you guys. Josh saying Tyus wasn't aggressive enough. Michael saying, I'll say it again, not one player on the team has gotten better from last year. That falls on coaching. Aaron saying, why on earth did he play his son so much? Yeah, let me look at the numbers here, buddy. I can't disagree with that. I mean, they needed somebody that could shoot 3-pointers out there, and he did have a couple, but Buddy playing 21 minutes in this game, head scratcher. That's what it is. It's a head scratching moment at this point. And Jim seems to like it times when he plays defense and a couple other things, but Buddy certainly should not have been out there for 21 minutes, especially when he started tailing off, started missing threes. Get him out. That's what he's in there for. And if he can't do that, he's a liability on defense at this point because of his size. Okay. Wow. They lost that way to Georgia Tech. Now we got to brace for impact against Duke. So we'll be back here Monday night after the Duke game. And as mentioned, we'll be here after every ACC game for the Orange. Live on the Syracuse Orange Basketball Facebook page. We do put this on YouTube, as mentioned, in case you miss it and want to go back and watch later. Appreciate all you guys coming by. Thanks to our friends at Krause Health for sponsoring our live chats here after the game. Please read my recap. It comes out the day after every Syracuse game, the morning after in this case, right? So that'll be up for you tomorrow morning. All the great coverage from Mike Waters and Donna DeToda and Chris Carlson coming your way as well. The great Dennis Nett as well on the photos. So Syracuse loses tonight 73-59, and Duke is next. Oh, goody. So we'll see you after that game Monday night right here on Facebook Live.